Hey there, deep diver. You ready to dive into some more corporate financials?
Always ready to see what secrets we can uncover.
All right. Well, today we're taking a deep dive into HDFC Bank's latest quarterly report. We're talking about the quarter that just ended, September 30th, 2024.
Oh, very recent. I'm excited to dig into this. Fresh numbers are always fun.
Yeah, and we've got all the documents right here ready to go. We've got the official reports from both the Bombay Stock Exchange and the National Stock Exchange of India. Plus, we've got their latest press release, too.
Oh, wow. So we're working with all the primary sources this time. This is going to be good.
Yeah, so we're really going to get the full picture today.
Awesome. Love it when we get into the nitty-gritty.
Right. So let's start with that big picture then. HDFC Bank's standalone net revenue, it went up by 9.2% this quarter compared to last year.
Okay. Solid growth. Not too shabby.
Yeah, not bad at all. But get this, their consolidated net revenue, which includes all their subsidiaries, that jumped up a whole 14.7%.
Whoa. Okay. So something interesting is definitely happening beyond just their core operations then.
Right. That's a pretty big difference. Now, for anyone who might be wondering what's the difference, standalone revenue, that's basically just looking at the bank's core banking stuff.
Yeah.
Like their loans, deposits, all
Yeah,
that.
a classic banking activity.
Exactly. But consolidated revenue, that's where it gets really interesting because it includes all those other businesses that HDFC Bank has under its umbrella. So think insurance, asset management, all sorts of things.
Oh, right. So it's like a much more complete picture of how the entire HDFC Bank enterprise is actually performing.
Exactly. And that 14.7% jump, that's a pretty strong indicator that this whole diversification strategy they've got going on, it's really starting to pay off.
Yeah, it's not just about being a bank anymore, it seems. They're going for this whole, complete financial hub kind of thing.
Right, exactly. But let's break that down a little further. What's actually driving this impressive growth?
Yeah, good question. Let's see.
Well, their press release highlights a couple of key things. First, their net interest income. That's up by a solid 10%.
Okay, so they're doing well with their lending business.
Yeah, that's right. That's like the, bread and butter of banking.
The old school way of making money in banking.
Right. Exactly.
But it sounds like they're not just relying on that old school strategy anymore, are they?
Absolutely not. They're bringing in money from other places too. Their other income category, which is mainly fees and trading gains, is also up.
Interesting. Okay, so it seems like they're playing the field a bit, making some moves.
Yeah, they're definitely not putting all their eggs in one basket anymore. But speaking of big moves, we can't forget about the elephant in the room, the HDFC merger.
Oh, yeah, that's right. This is their first full quarter of results since they joined forces with HDFC Limited back in July of last year.
Right. So this isn't just another quarter. This is a whole new chapter for HDFC Bank.
Totally. We really need to be looking at these numbers through the lens of this merger.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where having both the standalone and the consolidated figures side by side, it becomes so important.
Right, it's like we're seeing the picture both before and after.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm excited to see how this all shakes out then. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's put on our detective hats and see how this merger is shaping up their performance. One of the first things that jumps out to me is their loan portfolio.
Oh, yeah. How has that changed?
Well, remember we were talking about how India's rural sector and all those smaller businesses, how that represents this huge potential market?
Yeah, for sure. Tapping into that next billion consumers or whatever they call it.
Right, exactly. And it looks like HDFC Bank is making a very deliberate push in that direction. We can see this reflected in their loan growth. Their retail loans, those are up by a respectable 11.3%,
Okay, not bad.
which is good. But then you look at commercial and rural banking loans, and those have surged by a massive 17.4%.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a huge difference.
Huge, right?
Wow. They're putting a lot of emphasis on that sector.
Yeah, and this isn't just some coincidence either. If we look at the official documents we've got from the stock exchanges, those show us that HDFC Bank has been very strategically expanding their branch network. A full 51% of their branches are now in semi-urban and rural areas.
Wow, they're putting your money where their mouth is. It's one thing to talk about tapping into new markets, but they're actually putting the infrastructure in place to make it happen.
Totally. It's like they're setting up shop right in the heart of India's future economic growth.
Yeah, this move to those semi-urban and rural areas, that's incredibly strategic. I love it.
Right. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. This is a customer base that's often totally underserved by traditional financial institutions. HDFC is going to be the go-to bank for this whole new generation.
For sure. Smart move on their part.
But at the same time, let's not forget about their core banking business. That 10% jump in net interest income, well, that tells us that they're definitely not neglecting their bread and butter,
Yeah, they're walking the line.
even as they're expanding into all these new frontiers.
Yeah, it's a tough balancing act, and so far it seems like they're managing it quite well.
And speaking of balancing acts, let's talk about those subsidiaries.
Right.
They're a pretty key part of this whole diversification strategy.
Oh, absolutely. And this quarter, their performance is like adding fuel to that fire.
Right.
Yeah, the press release kind of touches on how well they're doing, but to really dig into the details,
Yeah.
we got to go back to these official documents from the stock exchanges.
It's like going behind the scenes,
Yeah,
getting that backstage pass.
exactly. And trust me, some of these subsidiaries are putting on quite a show.
Oh, yeah. Like who?
Well, like HDFC Securities, for example, that's their brokerage arm, right? They saw their profits jump by almost 50%.
50%. Now, that's what I call a success story. What's driving that kind of growth?
Well, it's probably a few things coming together. Remember how we were talking about India's growing middle class, how they're becoming so much more financially savvy? More and more people are wanting to invest their money. And a brokerage firm like HDFC Securities, well, they're perfectly positioned to take advantage of that trend.
Yeah, it's like they're providing the tools and the access for this whole new generation of investors.
Exactly. And it's not even just about individual investors. India's economy is booming. It's attracting foreign investment like crazy.
Yeah.
And all that means more activity on the stock market, which is good news for HDFC Securities.
So they're really riding this wave of growth on multiple fronts.
Exactly. They've got the brand recognition, they've got the network, and clearly they've got the expertise to make some serious moves in this market.
Totally. Okay, so HDFC Securities is killing it. What about the other subsidiaries?
Yeah, well, the reports also highlight strong performance from HDFC Life Insurance, HDFC eArgo General Insurance, and HDFC Asset Management Company.
Okay, so they're all doing pretty well.
Yeah, and these aren't just like little side projects for HDFC Bank.
Right.
These are strategic moves. They want to be the one-stop shop for everything finance.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how all these different subsidiaries fit into this bigger picture of what HDFC is trying
Yes,
to do.
totally. It's not just about keeping up with the times, it's about anticipating the future of finance.
And they're tapping into this really fundamental shift in how people think about managing their money these days.
100%. It's not just about savings accounts and loans anymore. It's about protecting what you have, growing your wealth, planning for the future, all that.
Exactly. HDFC is creating this whole financial ecosystem, and these subsidiaries are the building blocks.
I love that analogy. The building blocks. That's a good one.
But you know what I find really interesting?
What's that?
While the consolidated numbers, they give us this great, big, impressive overview.
Yeah.
It's when we compare them to those standalone figures, that's when we really start to uncover some more, I don't know, some juicier insights.
Ooh, okay, I see what you mean. It's like those spot the difference puzzles. Sometimes the smallest changes, those are the ones that reveal the most interesting details.
Exactly. So, for example, remember how we were talking about HDFC Bank's other income being up?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's true for their standalone figures. But when we look at the consolidated net trading and mark-to-market figures,
Okay.
which is basically their gains or losses from their trading activities,
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit of a discrepancy.
Interesting. Okay, so unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by discrepancy?
Well, so HDFC Bank's standalone gain in this category, it was about $2.9 billion.
Okay.
But the consolidated figure, it was much lower.
So that suggests that maybe some of their subsidiaries, they might not be performing as well when it comes to trading.
Yeah, not all sunshine and roses, right?
Well, hey, we're only looking at a single quarter's results here.
True.
It's normal for there to be a little variation in performance across different parts of the business, especially one as diverse as HDFC.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it does highlight something important. Even though overall growth is great, it's so important to look at all the individual pieces to really understand what's going on.
Yeah, like checking under the hood.
Yeah.
Right, just because a car looks all shiny and new on the outside doesn't mean there aren't any potential issues hiding underneath.
Exactly. And sometimes those potential issues, those can actually turn into some really great opportunities for growth and improvement down the line.
It's true, sometimes those little imperfections are the most telling.
Totally. And in this case, those imperfections are part of a really interesting trend we're seeing with HDFC.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, they're not just content with being a financial powerhouse, in that like traditional sense. They're always looking for new ways to like expand their reach, break new ground.
And it seems like they're not afraid to take some risks either.
No, they're not messing around. They're not just dipping their toes in the water. They're diving headfirst into some pretty exciting ventures. Remember earlier when we were talking about their move into those semi-urban and rural areas?
Yeah.
Well, that's just one piece of the puzzle.
Right? It's like they're building this whole ecosystem, this network of services that kind of touches every aspect of finance.
Exactly. And they're doing it through like a combination of growing their existing businesses, but also by making some really smart acquisitions.
Oh, yeah. Give me an example.
Okay, so check this out. The official report, it mentions their acquisition of, let me get this right, a majority stake in HDFC Capital Advisors Limited.
Okay. And what do they do?
Well, they're not just some random company. HDFC Capital Advisors, they specialize in real estate investments.
Wow. So they're not just financing homes anymore. They're becoming players in the real estate game themselves.
Exactly, that's a whole other ballgame.
That's a big deal.
Huge. And it just shows their long-term vision. You know, they're not just reacting to what's happening in the market. They're trying to anticipate it. They want to stay ahead of that curve.
It's like they're playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers.
Yes, exactly.
So what's the key takeaway for our listeners today? Why should they care about all of this?
That's a great question. You see, HDFC Bank, it's not just some isolated company, you know. They're a huge player in the Indian economy.
Yeah, they're one of the biggest banks in the entire country.
Exactly. So when we understand their moves, their strategies, their wins, even their losses, it's like we're getting a crash course in where the whole financial landscape of India is heading.
It's true. They're kind of a microcosm of the larger forces at play in the economy.
Exactly. And as India gets closer to becoming like a global economic superpower,
Yeah.
understanding the major players who are shaping that journey, well, that's some pretty valuable knowledge to have.
Couldn't agree more. Well, there you have it, deep divers. We've gone from the big picture all the way down to the fine print. And what have we learned today?
We've learned that HDFC Bank is transforming, they're adapting, they're growing, and all in ways that are going to have a huge impact on the future of finance in India.
And it leaves us with a lot to think about.
Oh,
How will HDFC's influence impact the competitive landscape?
good question.
Where we see more innovation? Will other players step up their game? Or will HDFC's dominance lead to even more consolidation?
It's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold.
Absolutely. So until next time, deep divers, keep exploring, keep questioning, and as always, keep diving deep.